As a kid, I was every parent's worst nightmare. At the dinner table, I had two habits that made my parents want to rip their hair out. I was a picky eater and I played with my food. I treated burgers as my artwork and molded them into random blobs, thinking that I had created the next $1 million masterpiece. But at the dinner table, I always made a huge mess and left frustrated that my artwork never looked the way that I wanted it to. Even then, I knew that I wanted something that could bring the sketches in my head to life. I wanted to get involved in the process and construct my food cell by cell. I didn't know it at the time. My wish would come true. What if I told you that we can now grow and print our burgers, steak, and bacon? With the help of cellular agriculture, we can now create products that would otherwise come from traditional agriculture but in a lab, essentially making beef without the cow and getting eggs without the chicken. And it allows us to grow the same meat down to the molecular level, emitting 97% less greenhouse gases, using 98% less water, and taking up 99% less land. The process goes as follows. We take muscle stem cells from an animal through a biopsy, and we immerse them in a growth media that gives all the essential nutrients that they need to grow. We then seed them into a scaffold to help mold them in the shape that we want them to grow into. And finally, we replicate the right environments that they typically have in the living animal using a bioreactor so that they can reproduce and form into our muscle tissue. But even though this process has been established for almost a decade, there are major barriers to overcome. We still haven't nailed the texture and taste of cultured meat. But first, let's take a step back and examine how cells are typically grown in a cow. Stem cells attach to the network of extracellular matrix proteins through receptors located in the muscle fibers. The extracellular matrix is like the instruction book for cells. It is a three-dimensional mesh of glycoproteins, collagen, and enzymes that transmits signals telling cells how they should arrange themselves. This needs to be replicated in our petri dish so that our cells are arranged in a way that we would naturally see them, like in a structured steak, for example. A key component to achieving this through cellular agriculture includes using a scaffold. And I like to think of scaffolds as the glue that holds everything together. Without it, our cells would just grow into a bath of meat mush. Scaffolds serve as a support network that cells expand and differentiate onto. We can co-culture different types of cells like muscle, supporting, skin, and fat cells onto the scaffold. And over time, when provided with the appropriate signals, the cells multiply in number and produce new tissue that takes on the shape of the scaffold as the scaffold degrades. However, current methods of replicating this include using static scaffolds. They are currently chosen to be made from porous materials that allow oxygen and nutrient flow while maintaining the cell's metabolic functions. However, even if static scaffolds get us pretty close to the texture and taste of regular meat, they're still not enough because they can't fully replicate the dynamic interactions that cells have in a living animal. Static scaffolds cannot provide cells with the elastic microenvironment needed to mimic the different layers of muscle connective tissue, meaning that the texture and taste of the meat will not be accurate. But there is a way to solve these issues through 4D scaffolding. My idea is to use 4D printing to overcome some of the major drawbacks of current scaffolds by providing structures that are both dynamic and animate. Smart materials such as alginate and cellulose-based hydrogels can be printed into a 4D shape so that it exhibits chemicals and physical properties and changes. So when exposed to stimuli such as heat, moisture, light, magnetic fields, or pH. The cellulose-based hydrogels can then be programmed and induced to undergo multiple controllable shape changes over time. The hydrogel scaffolds will swell when we add water to them and when the moisture is all absorbed. And the amount of swelling can be tuned by changing aspects of the hydrogel material. And we can actually control the timing and the extent of shape change that occurs, which helps us mimic the continuous changes that developing tissues go through in a living animal. It can also help us have a higher cell density, which means there will be more cells placed per scaffold, which allows for better structured meat. With 4D scaffolding, we can better replicate the cell-to-cell interactions in a cow and allow the muscle stem cells to assemble into the muscle tissues in a lab. We'll be able to grow lab grown meat that basically tastes the same as we are used to in no time. With cellular agriculture, a bright future lays ahead of us. One where animals no longer need to be slaughtered for meat. One where meat eaters no longer have to compromise their diets and lifestyles. One where people don't have to worry about losing their water source to meat production. And most importantly, one where printed burgers and childhood food dreams can really come true. Thank you.